Hello learners, welcome to our second class in determination of the equilibrium price, which is determined, as we discussed in our last lesson, by the forces of demand and supply. And we managed to explain how that is carried out. We had this example of a number of loaves that are demanded and supplied in a week at the same price, but the quantities demanded are different, until at a price where the quantity supplied equal the quantity demanded, and that is the point of equilibrium, or the point where the quantity demanded and quantity supplied is equal. And we went ahead and looked at the scenario where there is excess supply. Before you come to the equilibrium, we saw that when the price is at 5 shillings, you see there is excess demand, and when it is at 10, there is also excess demand. When the price goes up, then more suppliers would supply, leading to excess supply. Like in this case, you see when the price is 20 shillings, the quantity demanded is 100, supply 200, meaning there is an excess supply of 100 loaves of bread in that week, or in that day of the week. Then we went ahead and illustrated using a diagram on how to determine the equilibrium price, because this is the equilibrium price, which is 15, and the equilibrium quantity of 150. You simply draft the two curves on the same graph. And today we want to explain more as far as the excess supply and excess demand is concerned. We want to proceed from where we stopped. We want to look at the effects of shifts in demand curve and supply curve on the equilibrium. Because remember, we say that there is excess demand. Maybe we need to indicate how that demand arises. When the price is low here, remember that when the price is low at, say, 10 shillings, when the price is at 10 shillings, which is a lower figure or price, you see the demand goes up, because the lower the price, the higher the demand. You see here the demand goes up. But where the price is at say 20 or 25, when the price is 20 or 25, you see that this is, say, 20. When it is 20 shillings, the loaf of bread is 20 shillings, you see again the quantity demanded, the quantity supplied, when the price is up, the quantity supplied is also up. Okay, so when the price is high, you can see the impact of that price on demand. The impact of that price on demand, you see the demand goes up. I'm using the demand curve. To explain the impact of price on demand. So when the price is up, you see the demand is down. Okay? Okay, when the price is up, the demand is less. When the price is down, the demand for the loaves is high. All right? So that is very important to note. So you can see the excess demand. What is the impact? What we want to study now is the impact or the effects of shifts in demand curve and supply curve on the equilibrium. But before that, I wanted you to understand the concept of the excess supply and excess demand. And excess demand refers to the quantities demanded by customers over quantities that suppliers are able to supply in the market, as shown here. Then on the other hand, excess supply refers to the quantity supplied over the quantities that customers are able to buy. All right, and on this diagram, you can see that if price is set at, say, P1, you can call this P1. If the price is set at P1, because this is the equilibrium price, and this is, say, P2. When the price is set at P1, which is above the equilibrium, this is the equilibrium. If you set this price at P1, okay, which is above the equilibrium, there would be excess supply in the market. Okay, there is excess supply in the market. Here there is excess supply. We have excess supply. Okay, we have excess supply when the price is increased. When you increase the price, and even taking any point here, anytime price is increased, you see here, the trend here is an increase. Anytime increasing the price, you see the trend on the other hand. Quantity supplied, it increases. So when you increase price from 15 to any other point there, from 15 any other point here, because this price is above equilibrium. This is our equilibrium. Any price set beyond 15 shillings, there is an increase, there is excess supply. Okay, there is excess supply as shown in this diagram. Okay, looking at the supply curve, any increase in price here, you can see this is the equilibrium. Any increase will appear from this point to this point, so that the quantities are appearing on this side from 150. Okay, I want you to understand. Understanding is very important. As you can see here, the quantity supplied 150. Any other price above, starting from 20 in our example, the quantities will appear after 150 from this supply curve. Okay, from this supply. So there is excess supply. We have an excess supply. So so we're saying that if price is set at P1, which is above the equilibrium, P1, which is above the equilibrium price, there would be excess supply in the market. And in order to clear this excess supply, sellers will be compelled to lower their price towards equilibrium. Okay, So sellers will be forced to lower their price. Because of this excess, sellers will be forced to lower like that. They'll be forced to lower their price towards equilibrium. They'll be forced to lower their price towards equilibrium. That is on one hand. On the other hand, if price is set at P2, if this price is set at P2, which is below the equilibrium, this P2 is below the equilibrium, okay, which is below the equilibrium price, there would be excess demand. There would be excess demand, okay? If reduce price beyond equilibrium, as even shown here, you can see any price below, okay? Any price below the equilibrium, this is the equilibrium price. Any price below this equilibrium, you can see the demand is in excess. The demand is in excess when this price is at P2, okay? The demand is in excess. So this is excess demand. Here we can write excess demand. Excess demand. So how will buyers behave? The buyers will then be forced to increase their prices here. The buyers would be forced to increase the prices, towards the equilibrium price in order to attract more supply. So the buyers also will be forced to increase the price towards the equilibrium. So these are, you see, they are forces. They are forces. This is what we are calling forces until we have the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity. So we want to look at the effects. The effects of shifts in demand, because there has to be effects in shifts in demand curve and supply curve on equilibrium, because a change in demand or supply resulting in a shift in the demand or supply curve will affect the equilibrium points in various ways, okay? One way is change in demand. Change in demand. This is one effect. We are looking at effects. Okay? Effects of shifts in demand curve and supply curve on the equilibrium. So one effect is change in demand. In a normal situation where the demand curve slopes downwards, here, where the demand curve slopes downwards to the right and the supply curve slopes upwards, okay, to the right, an increase in demand will result into an increase in equilibrium price and also the equilibrium quantity. So that, and this is because an increase in demand will attract more or higher prices, and the higher prices will attract more supply. And this we explained when we are carrying out remember, shifts, okay? But we can still illustrate it for the purposes of learning. We can still illustrate what I'm talking about. Assuming now this is the demand curve. Okay? The demand curve. Remember, when we are talking about shifts in demand curve, we say that an increase in demand will attract higher prices, and the higher prices will attract more supply. Okay, will attract more supply, assuming now this is now the supply curve. So we're saying here that an increase in demand, okay, an increase in demand, this is our D1, this is D1. So an increase in demand will lead to this shift. We'll have a shift, and that is the D2 and D2. Okay, so an increase, you can see that an increase in demand will attract higher prices. Okay, an increase in demand will attract higher prices, and the higher prices will attract more supply, Okay, and you see in this diagram, demand increased from DD1 to DD2. There is an increase in demand, because don't forget, here we have the prices and quantities. Okay, prices and quantities. So as you increase the price, because you see this is when the price is increasing, okay, we are talking about an increase in demand attracting higher prices, and the higher prices will attract more supply, so that there is an increase in demand from D1 to, it has shifted. Shifting to the right means that there is an increase in demand. That shift to the right means that there is an increase in the demand, okay, from D11 to D2, with the effect that the equilibrium price and the equilibrium quantity changes from this initial, this is P1, okay, so it has changed, so that the equilibrium quantity has changed. Equilibrium quantity has changed from PE1 to this PE2. Okay, it has changed. You can see now there is a change because of the shift in demand. That shift in demand has led to an increase, okay, or a shift or a change from PE1 to PE2 and QE1 to QE2 respectively. This change moved the equilibrium point from E. This is the equilibrium point, E, to E1. The equilibrium point has changed from E1 to E2. On the other hand, a decrease in demand will result into a decrease in the equilibrium price and also the equilibrium quantity. Okay, so on that one we can also illustrate it. You should be able to understand this, because this is what, remember, we covered in our previous lesson when we are talking about. So this is D1, okay, then D2. So we have here D1, this is the supply curve, and we can call this D, this is D1, D3, D3. So that this is our, this one here. This is the equilibrium, and this is the equilibrium price. And we have a new equilibrium price here of PE1. Can call it PE3. A new equilibrium quantity of PE3, and this is PE. This is a new, can call this PE. This was PE to P. This is PE3. Okay, PE3. Then PE4, PE4, PE3. Okay, so that you can see here now. You can see here that a decrease in demand. A decrease in demand will cause the demand curve to shift to the left. This one shifted to the right. An increase in demand moves the demand curve to the right. The other one, a decrease moves the demand curve to the left. So that you can see that what is the effect? What is the effect? We are looking at the effect of change in demand. The effect of change in demand either when there is an increase in demand or a decrease in demand. When there is a decrease in demand, it results into a decrease in equilibrium price, and also equilibrium quantity. So that in this case you have a new equilibrium point. This is E2. Okay, this is a new equilibrium point, and there is a new equilibrium price of PE4. Okay, that is the effect of change in demand. Effect of change in demand. Demand can either shift to the right, and when it shifts to the right, you see there is a change in the equilibrium price from E to E1. But when there is a decrease in demand, there is a shift of the demand curve from the left to the right. It moves to the right, to the left. And in that case, again, there is a new equilibrium price and a new equilibrium quantity. This is supposed to be quantity, equilibrium quantity. It is a new equilibrium quantity and a new equilibrium price. So that is decrease. This diagram shows decrease in decrease in demand. Effect of this is increase in demand, and this one shows an increase. This is an increase. This one is showing us the decrease in demand. Decrease in demand. So that is effect of change in demand, and effect of change in demand can either be can shift the demand curve to the right, or it can shift the demand curve to the left. So a reduction in demand, in this case here, a reduction in demand changes the equilibrium price and equilibrium quantity, so that the point of equilibrium shifts. It has shifted. So that is the impact of change in the demand. We can now discuss the impact of change in supply. So that is what we can discuss today, effect of shifts in demand curve. Today we have discussed effect of shift in the demand curve. In our next lesson, we discuss the effect of shift in the supply curve. And I'm repeating this. Effect of shift. This shift can either be caused by an increase in demand or a decrease in demand. And we have explained all that. We will do the same as far as supply is concerned. And this is just a build-up. We are building up from this demand schedule. Remember, we talked about excess supply and excess demand, how buyers and sellers would behave. Just building up these concepts step by step. So we'll be taking this lesson step by step. I encourage you to go through the video again, and we will continue in the next lesson in analyzing this concept of equilibrium price. Thank you and God bless you.